video, and then I wanted to get on Assassin's Creed, maybe get 2 streams out of that. Then we'll come back and do probably 3 more on the channel. But anyways, let's get right into it. This is why Peter versus Miles is not even close. Let's see what they talk.
Bikin tenggorokan gak nyaman. Di luar
Peter.
ruangan, bikin tenggorokan kering. Bantu legakan tenggorokan.
They gotta make everything. He'll beat 2 streams back to back. They gotta make it.
The battle between Peter and Miles in Marvel's Spider-Man 2 was highly anticipated, and when the game finally launched, I can honestly say that this was everything I could have asked for and more. But how would a fight between these two actually go at their best? We're gonna go through 3 rounds here, with Miles fighting Base Peter, Black Suit Peter, and Anti-Venom respectively, in the streets of New York, to see how a battle would actually play out between these two. Going into physicals first, and I'm not going to waste anyone's time here, Miles would have a significant advantage over Base Peter in these categories. In terms of raw physical strength, Peter has shown to be capable of stopping punches from the Rhino, however he needed both hands to do so and has consistently shown that Rhino is stronger than him. Either in the Rhino character bio, where he nearly left Peter to a dead in a previous battle, or in the Miles Morales game where Peter was knocked unconscious when trying to stop the Rhino from doing his whole destruction thing. Compare that to an inexperienced Miles who took a beating from Rhino and remained standing, but more impressively, could knock the Russian villain around with his Venom strikes, and eventually beat him into submission in a fair brawl, in addition to later beating a more advanced Rhino in his solo game alongside Finn, with Miles getting significantly stronger in Spider-Man 2. This would be more impressive than any encounter Peter has had against Rhino in his life, including the 1v2 in the PS4 game, since Rhino and Scorpion essentially started fighting each other, with Miles going on to damage large chunks of a giant Sandman with his attacks, in addition to being able to fight Black Suit symbiote Peter and Venom to an extent. And whilst I'll break both of these encounters down later in more detail, this should comfortably give him an advantage in raw strength. Durability wise, both characters just don't go down, and you pretty much have to knock them out to put them down, with Peter could endure relentless pummeling from the Sinister Five and a fall from the Raft rooftop before being knocked out. However, a weaker Miles could absorb the energy of the reactor at the end of his game, which caused him great pain, and soon afterwards survived the resulting explosion, which was stated to be capable of destroying all of Harlem, before getting back up and swinging away after enduring a fall from the lower atmosphere. Comparing these scenarios alone would show Miles is superior, without even going into the shit that happened in the PS5 game. Speed-wise, they are pretty similar in terms of gameplay, however Miles I feel would naturally be faster, considering he was relative to the symbiote-empowered version of Peter, who would logically be superior to his base counterpart, in addition to being relative to Venom and Anti-Venom to an extent, with Miles also being noticeably more agile. Now Peter does have some advantages in all 3 rounds, I should specify that now. He's easily more intelligent than Miles, both in and out of combat. He's been Spider-Man for the best part of 10 years compared to Miles' 1 year, and whilst yes, they both have access to similar gadgets during the events of the PS5 game, Peter should still have the advantage in terms of equipment with his Iron Spider arms, which could endure the full force of Miles' bioelectric energy during the Sandman boss fight, likely making them an effective shield at blocking Miles' energy-based attacks, or a lethal weapon in his best case scenario for pulling out a narrow victory. But even then, I just don't see Peter winning against Miles in the first round. There's a significant power gap between the two, with Miles not being completely outclassed when it comes to web variation or gadgets. Additionally, Miles has experience dealing with an enhanced Peter, whereas Peter with his base equipment has no experience fighting Miles in a serious fight, as he used the symbiote powers, as we saw in the game. Ultimately, I see Miles winning round 1 low to mid difficulty. Now for round 2 with Black Suit Spider-Man, and I feel I should start this segment by saying, no, the fight in the game, whilst badass, is unreliable when determining who would win an actual fight. Both characters were holding back and not willing to end the other, with Miles reaching out to Peter throughout the fight, with Peter not even going all out against Kraven, the same guy who the symbiote consistently urged him to kill throughout the day, so it's pretty obvious he ain't going all out against his protege. Both were also not at 100%, as they had fought the Hunters and their respective villains prior to their encounter, and in Peter's case, this happened immediately prior to the conflict with Miles. Peter had also become progressively weaker as the fight went on. It's explained by Dr. Connors that Venom was stronger than ever due to achieving perfect symbiosis with Harry, and as a result, when Miles started getting through to Peter, it weakened the bond between him and the black suit, giving Miles a further advantage. Even more of an advantage than he already had, I should specify, as he was exploiting not one, but both of Peter's weaknesses as the fight went on, with his weakness to sound waves being so potent that Miles could have easily killed him there and then if he wanted to. In this hypothetical situation, both are 100% willing to kill, and Miles won't have access to the bell as it's in the streets as previously mentioned. Obviously, Peter is getting a massive boost to his power and stats, and for once we actually get a taste as to what a Peter who is no longer holding back looks like in his fight against Kraven, where he overpowers the Russian and chokes him nearly to death. With Kraven being so strong, he could effortlessly kill multiple Sinister Six members and even base Peter without too much issue. Compared to Miles, whose best and only noteworthy existence of being bloodthirsty or enraged was against Mr. Negative, a villain who Peter had already fought years prior, and whilst yes, he did win that fight and it's still impressive, it's not remotely close to Peter's showing against Kraven, with Kravinoff's goal being to have an honourable death at the hands of the most worthy opponent, yet he didn't even consider Miles as worthy once Black Suit Spider-Man was on the scene, with his plan then becoming the capture of Miles to draw out the rage of Black Suit Spider-Man, firmly confirming that he is superior to Miles in stats at this point, in my opinion. However, there are two important factors that will decide the outcome of this fight: Miles' lack of stamina and Peter's healing factor. A potential weakness for Miles is that when he abuses his bioelectricity, it leaves him exposed and drained. I mentioned earlier how neither was at 100% going into their fight. However, with Miles, he used up the majority of his energy against Martin Lee and the Hunters, leaving him vulnerable where he then had to recover before taking on Spider-Man. Compare that to Peter, who had been actively searching for Miles all day before fighting a large Hunter base, and Kraven himself before immediately going on to fight Miles, where he showed no signs of fatigue during any of this. And all of this is added onto Peter's already Iron Will-esque stamina, and we see what sort of shit Peter can do in the PS4 game with Broken Bones, and even when fatigued later in this game after tearing off the symbiote, he still holds his own against Scream and does reasonably well. The final nail in Miles' coffin being Peter's healing factor. No disrespect to Miles, he does have obviously better healing compared to a regular human. However, the symbiote in this fight is in another league altogether, and will allow Peter to regenerate broken limbs in seconds, with these two elements giving him a breathtaking advantage in a long drawn out encounter. All in all, I think Symbiote Peter would beat Miles in a scenario where he's not ridiculously handicapped like he was in the game. Miles would get in a few good hits, especially with his bioelectricity being effective against symbiotes. However, any non-lethal hits would be insignificant as Peter would just heal, eventually leaving Miles fatigued and left wide open for a killing blow. Symbiote Peter would eventually win, mid-difficulty I think. Moving on to round 3, the final round, we have Anti-Venom versus Miles, and I'm not gonna lie, this would be a bloodbath. Miles is pretty much going against an even stronger Black Suit Peter, with all of the same powers and abilities, including a few new ones, with none of the overly aggressive side effects. Peter would still have the insane healing factor from the symbiote, or one similar at least, in addition to the enhanced stats and endurance, but he will also benefit from a potential resistance to Miles' abilities. In the Insomniac verse, Anti-Venom was created and comprised from Martin Lee's negative powers in combination with a portion of Miles' bioelectricity, and as a result, Peter should no longer be vulnerable to Miles' electricity, but instead be partially resistant to it, I think. And this unsurprisingly would be really bad for Miles, since Anti-Venom wouldn't even be badly affected anymore by his once effective Venom shocks, assuming they even land at all, as Peter could just block them with the Iron Spider arms, which this suit has access to. Obviously, Peter's Anti-Venom power would pretty much be useless in this fight since Miles isn't bonded to a symbiote, and it would likely amp Miles if anything, although even if this was the case, Peter just has far too many advantages at this point to be denied the victory, combining the physical advantage with his intelligence and experience, with the insane abilities granted to him from being bonded to the Anti-Venom, in addition to the Iron Spider arms, And yeah, this would be a low to no difficulty showing if you want me to be completely honest with you. But that is just my own personal opinion based on evidence from the free games that we've been given. Please don't throw a fit. If you disagree with the outcome of any of these rounds, feel free to join the Discord server and we can chat about it because, you know, I like talking about these sorts of things. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't already, it really helps me out. And if you have any suggestions for future videos, let me know in the comment section down below, as this video was actually suggested by one of you guys. Thanks everyone, and as always, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Alright, thank y'all for watching. I'ma go get on the game. I saw Assassin's Creed DLC for the Odyssey game I be playing, and I want to get that and play it. And if I may